Okay, welcome back to the channel. Today we're just doing a very quick video on something that I've been planning on doing for a while. That is the understanding myself. This is a personality assessment. You may have seen a few of them online. If you just Google personality assessment, you'll get similar ideas to this. But on this one is endorsed by Jordan Peterson, who is a known Canadian psychiatrist and a famous internet personality these days. Has a very big YouTube channel. I heard about this through the Jimmy Carr interview or Jimmy Carr podcast on the Diary of a CEO. And I thought it sounded very interesting. That's basically what it is it asks you 100 questions to help you decide what your personality is, especially if you're looking for career work, what to do with your life, and very small questions like that. And it goes off these 5 major personality traits. They're extroversion, neuroticism, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness to experience. With that, we're going to look at my answers right away. And I have not seen these answers since I took the test. I took the test earlier on in the week, and I'm now going to record my reactions to them. Okay, so apparently I have moderately low agreeableness. Surprising, I would say. You are moderately low in agreeableness, which is the primary dimension of interpersonal interaction in the Big 5 personality traits scientific model. Agreeableness has 2 aspects, compassion and politeness. Well, I would say I'm quite polite. Agreeableness is a very complex trait. People high in agreeableness are nice, compliant, nurturing, kind, naively trusting, and conciliatory. However, because of their tendency to avoid conflict, they often dissemble and hide what they think. People low in agreeableness are not so nice, stubborn, dominant, harsh, skeptical, competitive, and even predatory. However, they tend to be straightforward, even blunt. Well, this is why I don't know why it says moderately low. I would consider myself someone who more avoids conflict. Stubborn, yes, okay, fair enough, I'm stubborn. Skeptical, okay, I'm quite a skeptic. I wouldn't say I'm that competitive. I'm quite laid back in that sense, but okay. If there were 100 people in a room, you would be the less agreeable than 70 of them. Okay. People who are moderately low levels of agreeableness are seen by others as competitive, cold, and less empathetic. They're less likely to look for the best in others and are not particularly tolerant people. Fair enough, I suppose. Agreeableness has 2 aspects, compassion and politeness. Okay, and I'm low in both. I would dispute that. You're moderately low in compassion, which is one aspect of agreeableness. Your score puts at the 25th percentile. Okay. Less compassionate people are not primarily orientated towards the problems of other people or other living things. They are less swayed by cuteness. Okay, I would agree with that. I'm not necessarily concerned with what other people are doing when I'm not with them. That doesn't say that if someone comes up to me and says I've got this problem, I'd be more than happy to help. I absolutely love using what I know to help other people. They like to win and they're less concerned by helping others. I wouldn't say I'd like to win. Maybe some of my family and my partner would be agreeing with what Dr. Peterson says there. They make sure their own needs or interests are attended to and less likely to sacrifice for the sake of other people. This can make them appear harsh and unsympathetic. People might turn to them for the truth, but not for a soft, patient, internally listening ear. I don't agree with that. I'm not very... I suppose this is why it's only moderately low. I'm not very blunt with the truth. I do sometimes maybe to avoid conflict, but I do think I'm quite a good listener. But I suppose I can be quite harsh in the sense that I'm not going to lie to people. I would just tell them what was. So yeah, okay, fair enough. Actually, I've probably spoken myself around to that. They are not markedly empathetic and caring. However, because they are not primarily other orientated, they are often negative efficiently on their own behalf and are likely to get at least what they deserve for their hard work, for example. In consequence, they are likely to harbour feelings of resentment or hidden anger. I'm a very forgiving person and I'm quick to change moods. I've been told by people close to me that I'll be very happy and I'll lose my temper really quickly, but then I'll get over it just as quick, and that's been the same since I was a baby. Politeness. I've always been told I'm quite polite, so this will be interesting. People who are moderately low in politeness are not particularly differential to authority, nor are they markedly obedient. They can be respectful, but only to people who clearly deserve it and are willing to push back when challenged. They are not particularly uncomfortable confronting other people. People moderately low in politeness are not particularly motivated to avoid conflict or steer clear of conflict or fights. If I see something that's wrong, I usually, I will highlight it, especially because I'm quite confident in my abilities to be able to change that for the better. Probably overly confident in that respect. But okay, interesting. And at the other end of the spectrum, conscientiousness very high. Okay, so this will be very interesting. You are very high in conscientiousness, which is the primary dimension of dutiful achievement in the Big Five personality trait scientific model. Conscientiousness is a measure of obligation, attention to detail, hard work, persistence, cleanliness, efficiency. Yep, I do try and be as organised as possible, if that's what this is trying to say. Conscientious people implement their plans and establish and maintain order, which I'm apparently very high in that. People very high in conscientious people are strikingly dutiful. They tend to be sloggers. They work uncommonly hard and hate wasting time. I wouldn't say uncommonly hard. They're very unlikely to procrastinate, particularly if they're also below average in neuroticism. I'm scared of what's going to happen with neuroticism. If a very conscientious person promises to do something, he or she will do it regardless of circumstance or without finding an excuse. They're uncommonly decisive, neat, organised, future-orientated and reliable. I remember when I was at school, teachers would say I wasn't very organised, and I kind of just went with the flow. That I have worked on as much as I can, and I do now consider myself quite neat, somewhat organised, as much as I possibly can. Reliable, I don't know. If someone asks me to do something, I would usually help, but then that contradicts with what the previous statement said, that I will put myself first, being moderately low anyway, which is the case. As if it's, for example, if I'm not busy doing something else, then of course I will be more than happy to lend a hand. But if I'm busy doing something with myself, then I usually would go with what I would do first, get that out of the way. Again, going back to the Jimmy Carr podcast that I watched, you can't help anyone before you help yourself. You can't, if you're in the best position, you're in the best position to help people, and that's what I consider. Very conscientious people are highly likely to obtain good grades in academic settings, particularly if they're also intelligent. I've always argued that I'm not particularly intelligent. I'm not necessarily stupid, but during my degree, I obtained good grades without, and like I said, I wouldn't consider myself particularly intelligent. They make extremely very good administrators and managers. Definitely not what I do for a job. They must have everything in its proper place, which has its advantages and disadvantages. Now, see, this confuses me, because there was a question that I remembered. I don't want to reveal too much about the questions on this, that says everything has to be in its proper place. And I'm not like OCD level of everything has to be going the way it should be. And but another one of the questions was, I can be very critical, and I know I could be very critical. Like, if someone's so close to being perfect, then why wouldn't you just go that extra step to even take it further? Like, why not? Why would you be lazy and not do that? I don't get that. So maybe that's where that's come from. Are more likely over concerned with detail. They do things by the book. Very conscientious people are so strikingly guilt prone. Although they organise their lives, they have felt little to be guilty about. Am I guilt prone? It'd be interesting if something contradicts that in one of the other personality traits. Very conscientious people are also hyper susceptible to shame, self-disgust and self-contempt. See, that I don't agree with. I don't feel myself being shamed particularly at all. Well, obviously at some points I will be, but I don't know. I don't agree with that part for myself, but maybe it's something subconscious, who knows. Individuals who are very highly conscientious reflect badly to failure, particularly if they're also high in neuroticism. See, I might be quite low on neuroticism then. We'll find that out later. They're typically judgmental, correct, and are disgusted by their own moral transgressions, yep, as well as those of others, yep. They suffer very high levels of shame and guilt when unemployed or otherwise unoccupied. Fair enough. Very conscientious people are primarily committed to personal responsibility. Yep, fair enough. Okay, I agree with that. I do hold myself responsible for pretty much anything. They have as an article of faith that those who work hard should and will be rewarded. Not necessarily. I think if you do work hard, you do need a bit of luck to be rewarded greatly, but I do believe that hard work does pay off. They can be micromanaging and controlling. They're over concerned with hygiene, moral purity and achievement. Fair enough. Very interesting. I'm also very high in industriousness, which is an aspect of conscientiousness. Very industrious people are typically successful in school and admin and managerial positions, particularly if they are intelligent. They live primarily to work and always have to do something useful. They do not like to sit around. They are very dutiful. They don't put things off or mess things up. They finish what they start. They do it on a schedule. And they consider how to accomplish more in less time with fewer resources. Yeah, that's our sentence I particularly enjoy. When I've accomplished something using a lower amount of resources than is what's considered the norm. I suppose dutiful, yeah, not liking to sit around is something that I do struggle with, where if I'm not being productive, I do feel a bit guilty if I'm not being productive in some way. But if I have been productive and then relax for hours and hours playing video games, I can feel fine. So very industrious people are highly likely to judge shirkers or people who are incompetent harshly and to want them out of the way. No, I quite enjoy teaching people, which I do with my work quite often. And they're very likely to believe that people fail because they do not apply themselves or work hard enough. I can feel like that, and it's hard to convince me otherwise sometimes. They feel guilty rapidly if they do not do their duty. However, because they typically stay on or ahead of schedule, except for they rarely experience actual guilt. Okay, fair enough. Yep, yeah. They cope very badly with enforced leisure or unemployment. Yeah. But saying that, I am concerned this may be a bit like when you read your palms or tarot readings that are they're generic for everyone. And maybe you just agree with them because everyone feels like this. But I think this is kind of showing that I'm very high one way and I'm not the other way. Orderliness. Highly orderly people tend to be disturbed and disgusted by mess and chaos. They keep everything tidy and organised. They tend to think more in black and white. Things are good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable, little room for grey areas. Disagree that entirely. I think there is no such thing as black and white. I think everything is a grey area. When I slip naturally, I'd say back into thinking things in black and white. I do try and catch myself, but I'd say maybe more naturally, and I'm trying to work my way out of it because I just know that that's not the case. Black and white isn't the case. Everything is grey. They make, like, and stick to schedules. They want everything where it should be, and they want to make sure it stays where it belongs. They are detail orientated. They're rule abiding and tend to insist on rules to be observed. This might be weird because I tend to go with the flow a lot of the time. I don't particularly enjoy it as much as if this is the plan, we've done the plan, and we've gone through with it, I suppose. But I certainly don't agree with that as much as I agree with the industriousness. Extroversion. I am moderately low. People who are moderately low levels of extroversion, they're not particularly enthusiastic, talkative, assertive in social situations, or gregarious. If I knew what gregarious means, I'd probably agree with that, but I certainly agree with the other four. I wouldn't consider myself particularly enthusiastic. Obviously, I'm not completely a dud when it comes to social situations and being enthusiastic. Some people would say I sometimes get way ahead of myself in situations, but most of the time I'd say that is correct. They tend to find excessive social contact draining and tiring and crave time alone to recharge. Yeah, they're less likely to plan parties, tell jokes, make people laugh, or volunteer for community services. Yeah, I love going to parties. I tend not to plan them because I'm quite happy if they didn't happen. I'm not particularly bothered, but I do very much enjoy them when I'm there. They're less optimistic about the past, present, or future. Disagree with that. I'm quite optimistic about the past, present, and future. I'm actually, out of most people I know, probably more optimistic than most. So, but I suppose I am somewhat realistic in my optimism, which I know is a contradiction. People moderately low in extroversion find it relatively easy to keep things to themselves. They're not compelled to share everything with everyone. They're not particularly self-disclosing and do not warm up to others quickly. I mean, if you ask me, I'm not going to hide anything. They're more comfortable with one-to-one interactions in a group-orientated situation. Yeah, I suppose, yeah. They are rarely the first to speak to managers, although they express, but then they said, I'll make a good manager, and they're less likely to captivate and convince. Yep, that's true. Jobs involved in sales, persuasion, working groups, and public speaking are less likely to appeal to them. Yeah, I would hate to be in sales. I know I wouldn't be good at it. I know I wouldn't enjoy it. They're less likely to be successful at such things. People moderately low in extroversion are relatively unlikely to be impulsive, even when offered the opportunity to do something exciting or fun. I'm trying to do this more, where if someone offers to do something, I'll just say, I'll be like, yeah, brilliant, lovely, enjoy it. I tend to go for them, but I might not necessarily organise those myself. They're less likely to sacrifice the future to the present. True. And something social beckons. They find it easy to study alone or work alone. I mean, yeah, I'm currently working from home, so I should say that. They're not easily distracted by opportunities to chat, joke, or socialise. Yeah, this is particularly the case, so they're also high in conscientiousness. Fair enough, which apparently I am. However, when people are introverted and conscientious, they're less productive than the extroverted and conscientious because they have low levels of energy. Enthusiasm, typical or average? So individuals who are average in enthusiasm have their excitable moments. That's a nice way of putting it. Are sometimes happy and are reasonably easy to get to know. They are essentially moderate in their positive emotion. They will talk about things or people they find particularly interesting, but tend to keep more quiet otherwise. I mean, that first three sentences, I couldn't be more spot on, I'd say. They laugh and joke, but not excessively. They don't crave the spotlight. I hate the spotlight, never mind don't crave it. They enjoy parties in moderation and generally like to be around other people, but they can spend their time alone. I mean, that could be my bio. They don't warm up immediately to others, particularly in groups, and they keep their own affairs private, he says while making an online video. They like excitement, but only in moderate doses, and are moderately positive about the past and future. You know what would be really interesting is doing this with members of my family, getting them to react, and my partner, and see what they think. I have low assertiveness, which means people low in assertiveness are not known to take charge types. They put their own opinions forward rarely, and their reservation. They're not typically attempt to dominate and control social situations. Some people tend to not be captivating in social groups. This is the one that's going to be interesting. Neuroticism. I'm moderately high. People with moderately high levels of neuroticism are somewhat more likely to think that things have gone wrong in the past, are going wrong now, and will continue to go wrong in the future. No, I mean, I prepare for it somewhat, but they're also more likely to be unhappy, anxious, and irritable when they're just thinking or remembering, and they encounter a genuine problem. They have lower than average levels of self-esteem. I don't agree with that really at all. I would consider myself irritable somewhat, maybe. I can lose my temper maybe occasionally too much over little things, but I wouldn't consider myself unhappy. Anxious, I mean, I don't know if it's compared to normal. I would say I get anxious, but everyone I think does. Neuroticism is a risk factor for anxiety disorders and depression. Self-esteem, low self-esteem. I mean, I don't think I've got low self-esteem. Moderately high levels of neuroticism may infer somewhat with both success and satisfaction with relationships and career, with strongest effects on relationships. Moderately high levels of neuroticism are associated with slightly more concern about mental and physical health, as well as more physician and emergency room visits, and higher than level absences at work. Higher than levels absences is just not true. I never really am off. People with moderately high levels of neuroticism appear to be somewhat risk averse. That means they're less likely to pursue or enjoy a recreational career, financial and social situation, but the possibility loss is high. You got me there. Yep. Withdrawal. I'm low. You are low in withdrawal. Individuals low in withdrawal rarely suffer from or are impeded by anticipatory anxiety. They can handle new, uncertain, unexpected, threatening or complex situations well. They are substantially less likely to avoid or withdraw in the face of the unknown expected. The last point literally says, I don't take risks. And then this one saying, we're very low, you do take risks. People with low levels of withdrawal tend to not feel sad, lonesome, disappointed, and grief-stricken if they do not deeply or very long. As I explained earlier, I do tend to change my moods very quickly, and I would agree with that. I don't tend to feel sad, lonesome, disappointed, and grief-stricken that often. They experience my much lower than normal levels of doubt and worry, embarrassment, self-consciousness. See, this I more agree with. But again, it directly conflicts what he said previously, but I suppose this is low and that was only moderately high. There are parts of neuroticism that definitely do link to my personality, but I think this withdrawal hits it higher on the head. They're quite resistant to, rarely worried about social rejection, and rarely feel hurt or threatened. Even when actually hurt, threatened, or anxious, they recover easily and quickly. Yeah. People with low levels of withdrawal are not warriors. If you're asking anyone, I am a bit of quite laid back in that sense. Okay, so yeah, it's weird. It's like I'm very low on one part of narcissism, which is withdrawal, and I'm very high on volatility. Individuals very high in volatility tend to vary a great deal in their mood. They can be very irritable, reacting quite strongly to disappointment, frustration, pain, and the threat of social isolation. They can lash out and are very easily annoyed. They are likely to act out or verbally express their frustration, disappointment, and irritability. They can be easily stirred up and upset, and once angry or irritated, take a comparatively long time to calm down. No. I tend to get over it quite quick. As quick as I go up, I come down, as I stated earlier. So, partly true. They may be argumentative and can lose their composure. Perhaps people very high in volatility get very upset if something bad happens. So it's so strange that I've gone high in one and low in the other. This is the last one of the 5. The openness to experience. I'm apparently moderately low in openness to experience. People with moderately low levels of openness and experience tend to be more conventional, conservative people. They're less known for their curiosity or interest in novelty or change. They tend to be comparatively disinterested in learning, particularly for its own sake, and they tend to stick by what they know. They do not typically engage in prolonged abstract thinking, seldom consider philosophical issues. Well, again, this is what confuses me, because there was literally a question that said almost exactly that. Do you consider philosophical issues? And I was like, yes. A lot of the time, that's what I consider when I have my free time. So they read somewhat less than a typical person. I read a lot, so this last point is just surprising me completely. I do consider myself quite curious as well. So they can think abstractly and learn when necessary, but are less intrinsically interested in doing so. For me, I'm not as abstract in my thinking, maybe. I'm quite good at problem solving, but thinking abstractly outside the box is something that I do need to learn more about. But I don't steer away from learning. I like learning. I enjoy it. It's what I love to do. I love to learn new things. Like with my history degree, I loved learning about where we've been and who we are. So almost the direct opposite of that sentence. They come up with new ideas relatively infrequently. May sometimes have difficulty getting their thoughts across to others. That I agree with. I do sometimes find it difficult to get my thoughts across to others, verbally especially. People moderately low in openness tend to stay on the beaten path and find satisfaction in the tried and true. Yeah, although I probably even enjoy more finding a new way to work something and find that a bit better. They tend to be they tend more often to avoid difficult intellectual problems or challenges. And again, I disagree. If there's no point in you're not being challenged, there's no point in doing it. Individuals moderately less experienced, less entrepreneurial in spirit. There's 2 parts of this: intellect and openness. Typical or average intellect. Do not confuse this with IQ. Very much so. I was going to say I wouldn't consider myself typical with IQ. I'd consider myself probably, I suppose maybe average. People typical in intellect can be interested in ideas and abstract concepts. They don't mind and sometimes enjoy being confronted with novel information, however, even if it is complex. They are as curious as the average person and occasionally like to tackle and solve intellectual problems. Well, that didn't... They are sometimes compelled to engage in philosophical discussions and enjoy more complex books, most frequently non-fiction. Yes, fair enough, you get me more here. They are particularly articulate and can formulate and communicate their ideas reasonably well. People typically find complex, rapidly changing, less likely to occurrence. This is, again, it just contradicts itself what it said before, but maybe this is because of this. I'm quite low on openness, apparently. The closest synonym for openness is creativity. People low in openness or creativity do not find beauty important and may not even notice it. They don't generally request an outlet for their creative ability and will certainly not without it. They don't typically appreciate art or beautiful crafts. Okay, fair enough. This sounds more to me. and are much less sensitive to colour and articulate form. They are rarely collectors, and if they are generally not passionate about it. And they're much less imaginative, much more rarely daydream, and reflect less often than average. Yeah, okay, agree with that. If they enjoy music or other art forms, they stick to what is conventional or popular, and rather than enjoy more than one genre. No, I wouldn't say I go out searching for other bits of music, but I'm not quite limited in what's popular, I suppose. But then I don't really listen to anything that's indie, so they rarely become immersed in a book or a movie or in their own thoughts. Yeah, true, I suppose. People of low openness tend to be stable and conventional. Okay, so a couple of things there that I did not expect. I didn't expect myself to be so low on openness, with openness to experience. This part of neuroticism, if you ignored the actual moderately high bit and go down to withdrawal and volatility, yeah, I agree more with that than I agree with the general neuroticism idea. Low assertiveness, average enthusiasm, I would say yes, that I agree with that somewhat. High orderliness and very high industriousness, I very much agreed with. Politeness, moderately low. Compassion, moderately low. Yeah, I suppose. So, yeah, overall, what I need to work on is my openness and my compassion for people. Okay, I'll have to consider that now I've gone through it. I would love to do one where I'm not necessarily answering the questions. Maybe someone can analyse, like myself. I'd love to do a video where people who I know react to this and see if they agree with it somewhat. And I would love to even do one with members of my family and my loved ones, because it would be nice to see what they say and how they differ from mine. Because I was reading through a few of those there, and certainly thought of this people came to mind who are close to me for a lot of those. So it would be great to see those. But I enjoyed going through that. If you want to do it yourself, all you need to do is go to the link in the description where I'll put that in there. Apart from that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Have a good day. Thank you. Take care.